From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to another edition of Weather Weeklies for February 4th, 2024. It is just 2 days past Groundhog's Day, and we had the groundhog make its prognostication like it does every single year, and it did not see a shadow, signifying, according to legend anyway, that there are early spring, not 6 more weeks of winter, but an early spring. I have to say that, and I've very publicly stated this is not going to be the case for our area specifically. It might be for somewhere else in the country, but not here. We have that in the long-range outlook that we did on Friday, the very first entry here. In spite of the groundhog, EPAWA projects 6 more weeks of winter. That's what we project. So I can't do any groundhog impersonations, so I'm just going to tell you that I don't think so, right? And we've had this for the last couple of weeks. This really shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Going back to the long-range outlook we did back on the 19th of January, we were targeting this period right in here for the change. We knew that it was going to be the last couple of days of January going to be mild, and then going into the first half of February, at some point during the second week of February, we would transition, and then we would be below average for after that point, and then sustainable for a very long time. I'm sitting here more than 3 weeks later than that, almost 4 weeks later, and still saying the same message, okay? So this is not something that we're just holding on to for dear hope and hoping it comes right or something like that. I mean, we were able to see this for a very long time, and there are several reasons for that, some of which I discussed here in the past couple of weeks. But you still see the naysayers on social media, and I get it because they like to see it before they can believe it. But, this is about as cut and dry as I've ever seen. So, I mean, it's not a question of if it's going to happen as far as I'm concerned. If you don't want to believe that, not my problem, okay? I'm just delivering the message, and when it happens, you'll understand. Now, there is a difference between cold and snowy and just cold, okay? So we will have the cold get in here first, but if you have a cold period this is sustainable for this long, which is a long period, we're talking about from the middle of February through at least the middle of March. That's a long period. You're not going to be dry that entire time, okay? So the chances that you're not going to get snow in that time frame are probably pretty slim, as long as these temperatures are what we project that it will be, and there's really no reason for me to go against that right now. So you will have snow during that time frame, okay? Are you going to get a big monster storm? I don't know that, okay? This is not something that we can project long ahead and say, well, on February 27th, we're going to have a blizzard. You can't do that. This isn't the Farmer's Almanac, and I told you that before. This is something that is probability-based. That's what long range is to begin with. So what we're going to do is focus on temperature patterns and precipitation patterns, and if you have slightly below to below average temperatures in place, you're giving yourself a fighting chance for snow. Okay, so that's the general idea. Here's what average snowfall is now updated for the February and March period, because we are now past January, of course. So for the next 2 months, this month, of course, is the climatologically the snowiest of the year. So this is what your average snowfall is at each location. We have slightly above average snowfall listed for February, even though the first half you're not getting squat. It's all going to happen in the second half, and we can achieve these numbers in the second half, we think, or exceed them. That is possible. And then, of course, here in March, it goes down, probably cut in half in most locations, except for the far interior. Wilkes-Barre still holds on to a rather snowy period here in March, but the rest of us are cut in half from what you would see. And then when you go into April, you're like usually less than an inch at most locations on average, okay? So this is really our next 2 months, and if you get it in March, it's typically the first half of the month to see that. Now, we are below year-to-date snowfall. This is where we are in the left column, and it's in red because like we has been all year. It's been below average. It was 1 week after that Philadelphia went above year-to-date projection, but now you're below that. This is where you should be, 11.9. It's not terribly below. The area that is terribly below right now is right here near the New York City area. Newark, New York City, northeastern New Jersey is well behind. Okay, the rest of you're behind, certainly. Scranton's could be, a little pretty far behind too, but, some of these other areas are about, within a stone's throw of what average is, but you're still below either way to this point. It's only going to get worse here for the next week or two, okay? Week to 10 days, I would say. The next week here is going to be pretty mild. After that point, we will start getting into some colder temperatures and balance this out a little bit. So here's where the El Nino sets for this week. I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is kind of getting toward the end of the season. This is more like an early season thing we look at. But just to give you the idea that the progression for cooler is still on track. There was a spike here in Nino for this week, which is our far western region in the Pacific, and that is because of the position of the Kelvin wave that is currently running through the Pacific, looping through phase 7 of the MJO. We'll get to that in a second. So that contributes to a little bit of warming here temporarily, but the rest of the regions are either unchanged or slightly falling off, and we do expect that that's going to continue to happen here over the next couple of months. We're going to see a steady decline in El Nino. So still a strong Nino right now. It'll be heading toward neutral by the time we get to right around the equinox, which is the 19th this year of March, and that's a large part because of February having a leap year. This is a leap year for February. We'll have a 29th this year. So here's the Madden-Julian oscillation. This is the latest GFS extended and European extended, just to give you an idea of where this is going. There's, again, both have them like kind of looping in phase 7 here. You see that? They're both doing this little loopy-loop thing, and a large part of that is because we had an omega blocking pattern over the United States this week. So this is kind of expected. It kind of holds up the pattern a little bit and helps it loop before progressing forward. Now, it does take it into phase 8 in both cases here. GFS extended actually keeps it outside of the null circle in the middle, the circle of death, and just kind of straddles phase 8 and then goes into phase 1 with time. Does that happen? I don't know that yet. We'll see. European model does take into phase 8, at least briefly, and then into the circle of death after that point. Now, that's okay if you're looking for a longer period in phase 8, which is the mecca of snow and blocking and cold and all that stuff. It's where it comes from. It's not so much the amplitude is as important as where it is coming from when it collapses into the circle of death. So if this does not stay outside the circle here, like the GFS extended shows on the left, and instead collapses in the circle, wherever it comes from, you have lingering effects of the previous phase that it came from that extend longer in the circle of death because there's nothing really to motivate the pattern to change. Okay, there's no effect on the pattern if it's in this circle. But if it came from phase 8, it will continue with those phase 8 symptoms basically for longer. So you can almost account this as like an extended period of phase 8 going into the circle of death on the European extended. And this is helping to give a little bit of credibility to not only the pattern changing mid-month, but also sustaining itself for a longer period of time. This isn't something that's going to go away. Okay, here's what we have for this week, and it's going to be very warm because we have strong ridging. This is part of that omega block that was over the central U.S. It's not going to be shifting eastward and moving out. You just notice up here in Greenland, there is a positive NAO, which is denoted by the lower height anomalies here. So this is a warm phase for us. This is all ridging and warmth in here. Okay, so we're going to have a warmer stretch there as we get, especially toward the end of this week and then going into next weekend. It looks like it's going to be pretty warm there. The question is, how quickly does this move out? And there are indications that it does do so. And what this is going to do is set up blocking over Greenland with time and allow cold air to undercut that block. And we put this forward, we can see that as we go through time. Here goes the ridging moving out. You have cold air undercutting the block here down here. Could be a storm signal right around the 12th, 13th time frame we have to keep an eye on. I didn't list it as a storm signal because it looks like it's going to be primarily rain. The European model last night had other ideas. I'll show you that in a second. But look what this does with time. So you get, this is now the 2-week ensemble. This is looking at Fantasyland ensembles now. This is looking at within the next 2 weeks, right? We have ridging building into Greenland and very strong at that, might I add. Very strong. So all that's cold undercuts the block and starts to build in by the time we get to mid-month. So this is no longer fantasy here. And if you go to the end, very end of this loop, and I stop this, I have to wait for this to loop here through here. As you can see the blocky moving back in. I'm going to just stop this right here, just so you can see what's going on. Okay, you have strong ridging in the western United States. You have a negative EPO or cross-polar flow developing here. Here's your polar vortex. It's sitting right over, what is that, Baffin Island, Hudson Bay, or just north of Hudson Bay. That's where it's sitting. This is your negative NAO regions. This is sitting over Greenland, so this is a good spot for blocking. And then you have the cold underneath the block here, cutting underneath that block as a result of that, okay? You can get storms in that situation that could be quite large. Not always, though. It's not a slam dunk pattern, but when you have all these teleconnections combining here, you're at least giving yourself a fighting chance, and that's what I keep telling you. Yes, it's going to get colder, but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get slammed with snow. Okay, you might just get a little couple storms that, or several storms throughout the month that give you, 3 here, 6 here, 4 here, whatever. That's possible too. But you're at least giving yourself a good chance at something when you have this cold undercutting the block like this. And it's a very strong block at that. So we'll see how the month goes, but I like this setup still. This is the same setup that I liked a month ago, so it's not like this is anything new I have to share with you. If you've been following along these videos here for the past, just the past month, you've understood that, right? And just take a look at this mental snapshot of that. If you look at the typical El Nino paradigm for February, and gee, that looks awfully familiar, doesn't it? Here's the block, right? You got a cross-polar flow, you got ridging in the western United States, and you have cold undercutting the block. These are all, if you take a composite mean of all the El Ninos since 1876 in the month of February, this is what you have. So it's not surprising that we're looking like this long term. Okay, this is just the normal El Nino progression from this in December. Then we go to January, look like that. You get some snow chances, but not a whole lot, and then you get into February, it looks a lot better. Okay, so there are opportunities going forward. Here's that looking at the ensemble is looking at a 500 millibar chart, just so you can see that transition as this blocking builds into Greenland up here. Here's the cold. These are actual temperatures, temperature departures from average. As the blocking sets up over here over Greenland, this is just the 2-week ensemble, by the way. Here's all that warmth that we have late week and weekend that moves out. And then we have the colder temperatures moving in around mid-month, or maybe just before, and then you have this sustainable for a while, it looks like. Now, with the NAO, this is what it looks like and what it can do. Okay, so the whole idea here is you have a strong high and ridging over Greenland, and that allows the cold, combined with the EPO, combines with some cold air coming into the United States underneath that block, and then you get cold and snow chances in our region. Again, there's snow chances. This is all probability. This is not meaning that we're going to have some big blizzard, okay? So I get a lot of questions about that. Do you foresee a big storm? We had a couple little storms. We had like a week to 10-day period where we had some snow, 3 different occasions. And people are asking, well, okay, that's great. We got something, but we want something big. It's not a guarantee of that, but you have this is as good a shot as any in this next month, basically, starting the middle of February, going through the middle of March. Hopefully it just stays to that point. I know we're getting a lot of questions about, well, what about early spring? Is it going to be cold? Sometimes it can be in early spring. It's outside of my purview as far as what we like to stick to in a 5 to 6 week long range lead time that only takes us to about the equinox, which is again the 19th of March. Beyond that, do we moderate the second half, the last 10 days of March heading into April and have a milder April? I don't know that yet. Some El Ninos do, some don't. It just depends on the progression of things, and there's some other factors that will play into that too. So we'll see. And the EPO also creates the cross-polar flow, which does the same thing. It gets the cold air into the United States. And again, when you have a block in place here over Greenland, that makes everything kind of undercut the block over in these areas. So we'll see how this progresses, but I really like still what I'm seeing going forward as far as getting us back to winter and the forecast working out. Not that I want that, because I'll tell you what, I keep telling people this a lot, is as I get older, the snow doesn't have the same flavor it does 20 years ago for me, okay? So I don't like removing snow. I don't like the cold necessarily. I would rather have it spring-like, like we're going to have this week. I'm loving this week coming up. Full sunshine, and we have at least up through Wednesday or Thursday, and then after that, it's just warm through the weekend. So that's my ideal kind of winter, but I understand that it doesn't work that way. Here is taking the extended European model. Again, that blocking builds in Greenland, but it just doesn't go away. This goes all the way through the equinox, which is the 19th, the evening of the 19th. Watch it build in here. You got all this cold underneath the block here, and then a stormy pattern as well, potentially. This goes all the way to the equinox. But this might extend past the equinox. I'm not sure yet, because again, it's outside of that 5 to 6 week purview. But you have the idea here that once blocking gets established, it doesn't let go. It just stays here. The PV stays here, right? So there's still blocking going all the way into March. So this is a long, sustainable period, it looks like. And as far as temperatures, here's what the temperatures do for that. Once the block gets established, you start off with, hold on, let me just start. Okay, you start off with a warm this week, and then the cold comes in, and it just sticks around, at least slightly below average, straight through the equinox. So it's a sustainable pattern. Now, last night, the European model had a cold front coming through Friday night and Saturday, which we have in our local forecast, right? What this does then is sets a baroclinic boundary a little bit further south as this in the wake of that front. So you have, in this case, low pressure moving along that gradient. So this is like a gradient overriding pattern it showed last night. Now, this is the max range of the European model, so I wouldn't take this for anything right now. But if it is, the point is, if it's a little bit further south, this boundary, as this low pressure moves out in this direction, it could throw some wintry weather into our region. So in our local or actually not our local forecast, but the long range, because it's not in the local forecast yet, it's a little too far. Long range, we have this system right here, and it says rain or snow. It's that we have the 13th and 14th. It's probably more like the 12th and 13th. This is coming in. So the date moved up a little bit. But this is the preceding the expected pattern change that could lead to rain, snow, or rain changing to snow. And that's what the European model showed last night, but it was a little more aggressive further south with this. So I'll let this loop through this time just so you can see. There's the cold front moving through, right? Friday night, sets the boundary. Here comes the next system. As it moves by, pulls in colder air, and you get some snow here, a rain to snow situation. So that is certainly possible. I don't want to put much stock into that yet because, again, it's out there a little bit, and we didn't have this as a winter storm signal because of that, but I can see how this certainly turns to a snowier solution, especially since you have cold air following this system. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that, but with or without that system, there are plenty of winter storm signals going forward yet. Plenty of winter storm signals. So here's that first period, or on the 12th and 13th, right? It's not really overly thrilled with this period. There's some there, right? It's not like an incredible signal, but when you go past that, you get into these are when you get your winter storm signals going forward, okay? And there's a few that we identified here in a long-range outlook on Friday, which was that 15th to 17th period. I think that's one, and then you have another one a few days later. I think it was the 22nd through 25th, I want to say. By the way, when I do these outlooks, I mean, my name's on them, but we have a collaborative effort coming up with these here. These aren't just me coming up with these signals, right? So 15th to the 17th is one, 22 to 25. 22nd to 25th is the second one that we listed. So there might be additional ones after that too, but for now we just listed these. And again, you're not going to see them on any model. Well, the first one has the winter storm signal is shown actually a little bit to some extent on the GFS. It was there this morning anyway, but you're going to see that go back and forth over the next couple of weeks here. But there is a signal in this period, and then right after that. Will these both work out? I don't know that yet. We'll see. But there are at least waves in the vicinity, and if you're in this colder period at this time, that's why we're putting this as a winter storm signal instead of just a regular storm, which is the one prior. So, and even though that could have some wintry aspect to it, we'll see. There is another aspect to this. This is kind of like a wild card. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the European model suggesting we might have another warming event in the stratosphere that could take this down toward a zonal wind reversal. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen. I don't know how this is going to work, but if this did in fact end up as a total wind reversal, we could be sustaining this a little bit further than the cold anyway, so sustaining a little bit past the equinox. So we'll keep an eye on this in the next week here. This would be like mid-month or just after this would occur, if it were to occur. Just kind of a back burner wild card thing, just to monitor and see what happens. But there's other things that could help lock this in a little bit longer too. But we do think this is going to be a sustainable pattern for a long time to end winter, and we are not going to have an early spring, at least past this week. It'll feel like that this week at times, but it's not lasting. So milder than average temperatures are likely to maintain through midway through February week 2, and then we get that pattern changing storm, whether that's rain or snow or both, we'll see. That's right around the 12th, 13th. After that point, we start getting colder. Colder pattern settles in. Thereafter, with blocking becoming established, and it is sustainable because the blocking stays in place. This is the reason it stays in place most notably is because it's following the normal prototypical El Nino paradigm for the month of February. That's what happens in February, okay? Snow chances increase after the second week of February, continue through at least early March, with winter storm signals being multiple during that period. I'm not going to go as far as some meteorologists do that just like to take the most extreme situation and run with it. I'm at least allowing, as a scientist, or product of science, you have to at least allow for the possibility that it could be a colder and drier period. It's possible, but I don't see that being drier. It's going to be hard to go an entire month, actually longer than a month, because the next, up through the first 2 weeks of February are pretty much dry, right? You're saying that you're going to be basically no precipitation or very little precipitation from mid-February to mid-March after having the 2 weeks prior already dry. It's probably going to be tough to do that. So I don't see it being a dry, cold and dry pattern, but at the same time, it doesn't mean we're going to have Armageddon either, okay? And some people are portraying that. They're saying there's a lot of similarities to when they see a pattern like this on the Euro Weeklies here, and it's more like a 2010 pattern in February, and that is true. It does look like that from an upper level standpoint. That produced snowfall, but it doesn't mean it's going to guarantee that you're going to get it smacked with a big storm here. Could you? Yes, and there's a pretty good setup for that. But, what if this tracks further south or further north or whatever? It doesn't mean it's going to necessarily hit here. So we'll see. I like the chances going forward, but I do think this is at least a sustainable colder pattern, and that's what I'm trying to do here. And the message I'm trying to portray is that at least if you get cold in place and it's sustainable, especially over a long period of time like that, you give yourself a fighting chance, if you're a snow lover, to get snow here for the remainder of winter, and we didn't just have that 1 week of winter and that's it. Okay, so that's this edition for this week of Weather Weeklies for February 4th. Join us again next Sunday. Hopefully at that time we're talking about actual storms, not so much projected storms. And, we'll see where we go from there. But I still like the pattern we're heading into, and that hasn't changed or wavered for me over the past month. So I'll see you again next week. Take care.